Incredible twist, single mom discovers an unexpected connection at a wedding with a billionaire. Lila Thompson adjusted her dress for the umpteenth time that evening, feeling out of place among the sparkling gowns that swirled like galaxies around her. The sun dipped lower, casting a golden hue over the vineyards of Napa Valley, where her best friend, Jessica, was marrying a man of unfathomable wealth. Lila felt underdressed even in her carefully chosen outfit. She was a dedicated nurse and single mother, weighing the cost of each bill and grocery item with the precision of a surgeon. As she navigated through the reception, the laughter and clinking glasses felt like a parody of life one she didn't quite belong to. The contrast between her modest upbringing and this world of extravagance gnawed at her insides. She often caught herself belittling her own worth. Was she truly worthy of standing shoulder to shoulder with these affluent guests? The thought made her stomach twist painfully. She couldn't help but feel invisible, her struggles tucked away behind the glamour. Billy, her introverted son, was at home, probably engrossed in his favorite video game, oblivious to the shimmering dreams she kept chasing to create a better life for him. At the height of her growing unease, a smooth voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. "You look like you need a drink," said a striking man with an easy smile and an air of confidence that commanded attention. Jake Harrington, Lila learned, was the billionaire behind a successful tech startup. He had a charm that made her momentarily forget her turbulent emotions. Their conversation flowed seamlessly as they found common ground in stories of parenting and relentless aspirations for the future. He was disarmingly relatable, sharing his own struggles of financial instability during his early days, echoing Lila's own sacrifices. Yet beneath the laughter, an undercurrent of tension hummed in Lila's thoughts. She sensed something heavier beneath his facade of success. As the night wore on, whispers reached her ears about Jake's company planning to go public soon, a move fraught with ethical dilemmas that clashed with her deeply held convictions. She felt a creeping doubt slither through her, questioning whether standing by him would mean compromising her integrity. Lila's heart tightened as she envisioned the leaps of faith and risks that come with rapid wealth decisions not made for the greater good. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As she smiled at Jake, a seed of hope was planted amid her anguish. He stood for everything she had hoped to escape from in her own life: self-interest trampling integrity, greed overshadowing good. Her breath grew shallow at the thought of potentially facing the future with someone whose ethics teetered on the brink. Would she risk everything she stood for, including the values she wanted to instill in Billy? A storm of unresolved feelings welled within her, infatuation coiling tightly alongside profound disillusionment. The laughter and clinking glasses faded away, growing distant as her inner battle raged on. Lila felt utterly trapped, straddling two worlds that were irreconcilable. She could sense the impending collision, and as her mind spiraled to the echoes of her late grandmother's wisdom in the face of injustice, always choose love over fear, she stood frozen, unsure of which path to take. The question lingered in the crisp air around her: could love indeed survive in a reality steeped in ethical turmoil? Lila's heart pounded in her chest, a quiet reminder of the stakes resting on the precipice of her newfound connection. She was tugged between the allure of Jake's charisma and the jagged edges of the reality he represented. The buoyant atmosphere of the reception muddied her clarity, and her fingers clutched the rim of her wineglass as if it could anchor her thoughts against the tide of uncertainty. As she watched Jake navigate conversations around him with ease, laughter slipping effortlessly from his lips, she couldn't shake off the growing sense of discontent. While he was charming and evidently brilliant, Lila's instincts weren't swayed by outward appearances alone. The whispers of discontent about his company's motives echoed in her mind. Was he a good man or merely a man defined by his wealth? With determination coursing through her, Lila excused herself from the dance floor to step outside, needing space to breathe and think. The cold night air struck her like a wave, a welcome jolt to her senses, spurring her to consider her choices. She faced her reflection in the glass doors, seeing not just a nurse and mother, but a woman who had made tough decisions to prioritize her son. Each sacrifice carved more depth into her character, strength into vulnerability, insights into aspirations. What had she built over years of toiling in the healthcare system, if not uncompromising principles? The mingling sense of earth and vine filled her lungs as she paced, recalling her own childhood lessons on honesty and fairness. She envisioned Billy, tucked safely in bed, and the world she wished to cultivate for him, one that was nurturing and aligned with her values. Was the chance of climbing a social ladder worth gambles that might compromise those values? A familiar voice interrupted her thoughts. It was Jake, stepping into the cool night, curiosity lighting his eyes. "Care to share what's weighing on your mind?" he asked, his tone disarmingly sincere. Suddenly, the challenge was palpable, pressing on her chest. Lila hesitated, staring into his eyes that shone with a mixture of understanding and scrutiny. This was a defining moment, and she felt the gravity of the conversation loom over them. "Why do you want to go public?" she posed, her voice steady despite the whirlpool of emotions inside her. "Is it for the integrity of your company or just for profit?" Jake's brow furrowed, a flicker of surprise crossing his features, as if her question had struck too close to home. "That's a complicated question, Lila," he replied after a pause. "Growth means risk, isn't that how progress operates? It can also lead to devastation for many," she countered, her resolve crystallizing with each word. "I've seen the impacts of decisions driven by greed. I can't align with that kind of vision." His expression shifted, revealing a depth she hadn't anticipated, an ember of vulnerability that opened a window into his own internal conflicts. "You may not know it, but I've been wrestling with those exact fears," he admitted. "I don't want to compromise ethics for ambition, yet sometimes the pressures are overwhelming. I could use someone who understands." The words lingered, and Lila's mind flickered to thoughts of partnership and authenticity. Was it possible that Jake was grappling for more than just profit? Her instinct to trust fought against the shadow of doubt lingering in the back of her mind. Yet the gravity of the moment swayed her, a line drawn between what could be and what should be. Could she embrace the possibility of love while risking the values she held dear? "Trust and transparency are not just buzzwords to me, Jake," Lila spoke carefully, preparing herself to confront the prospect of what their relationship could evolve into. As the stars twinkled above, she sensed the evening closing in around them, an opportune moment to solidify boundaries. This was a crossroads, echoing the wisdom of her grandmother's words. A choice loomed ahead, and even if stepping towards Jake felt like knocking at a door cloaked in uncertainty, she couldn't ignore the tug of potential. But her journey was far from over. A sudden whisper of her conscience urged caution. Was her growing attraction leading her to a path of peril? The night deepened, and as she looked at Jake, a glimmer of understanding passed between them, balanced precariously on the edge of attraction and ethical concern. Would she dare to step further inside the tumultuous world he inhabited, or was it simply a siren call, beckoning her into troubled waters? The harrowing truth arrived stark and vivid. Lila held the power to redefine her future. Would she take that leap of faith, or would self-preservation choke the flicker of hope ignited within her? Lila stood silent as Jake's gaze lingered on her, a weighty silence enveloping them, charged with unspoken tension. Each heartbeat felt like a drumbeat echoing her conflicted thoughts. This conversation was more than mere curiosity. It was a confrontation with the unknown, the first step into a world where she could unveil parts of herself she had long kept locked away. "I understand that my world might seem incompatible with yours," Jake finally said, breaking the spell. "But isn't it worth exploring what that could mean?" His words hung in the air, brimming with a promise that both excited and terrified her. Lila's heart danced between risk and caution. Exploration can lead to discovery. But at what cost? she replied, her voice capturing the tremors of her unease. Every time she thought of letting herself drift closer to him into his world, her intrinsic values felt under threat. The drive to protect her son from the harsh realities of ambition and profit loomed large in her mind. Was it selfish to seek something more for herself when there was so much at stake? Jake's allure, while magnetic, stirred an unfamiliar disquiet. Lila found herself questioning not just the choices he faced, but her own potential to navigate this emotional labyrinth. Basic integrity should always be the foundation, Jake. Growth should not come at the expense of honesty, she ventured, searching his expression for a flicker of understanding. I agree, Lila. I'm trying to find a balance, he admitted slowly. But those pressures, they can distort even the best intentions. His vulnerability hung between them like a fragile thread. Here was a man burdened, perhaps by his wealth and expectations. The image of Jake, usually so poised, cracked just enough for Lila to see the man behind the mask. Then maybe both of us need to explore what that balance looks like, she said, an unexpected resolve blossoming within her. It was time to confront not just his battles but her own. Her career had sharpened her instincts for the delicate dance of ethics and compassion, perhaps those very tools could guide her in this realm as well. As they stood there, Lila felt an awakening within herself. She had always defined her worth through her roles as a nurse and a mother, but could there be room for a woman seeking connection, even in uncertain circumstances? I can't abandon my values, she reaffirmed, her steady breath grounding her thoughts. But I also can't ignore this connection we have. It could lead to something much greater than either of us can see right now. Jake smiled, the tension easing slightly. Then let us not label it just yet. We can both take time to understand what this is. Though the atmosphere shifted toward optimism, Lila couldn't shake the uncertainty that coiled around her heart. This was a nascent relationship, ripe for exploration yet tinged with the complexity of her world and his. The more she pondered their conversation, the more her internal compass nudged her toward an unexpected realization: she was not just bound to protect but also capable of growth. Awareness brewed within her, a shift from mere survival to a conscious engagement with her own desires. Lila took a deep breath, feeling an ember of possibility ignite. Perhaps she could redefine her reality without sacrificing her core principles, blending her life as a mother and a professional into something more holistic. But just as the first rays of understanding broke through the shadows, a flurry of doubt crashed in. What if Jake's struggles consumed him, dragging her along? Was this burgeoning journey a ticket to growth or a perilous plunge into the unknown? As she stood beside him, a risk lay before her. Would she continue to explore the enigmatic nature of their connection despite the apprehension churning in her gut? Or would she retreat into the safety of certainty, sacrificing what might bloom into something beautiful? The night weighed heavily with questions as they faced each other, future directions branching off into obscurity, waiting for her to choose her path. Would she dare to step into uncharted territory, risking everything she fought to secure? In that moment of contemplation, she realized the journey was just beginning. Lila's heart thrummed with anticipation and fear. Where would this exploration lead her? Would she emerge empowered, or would she find herself ensnared in the very chaos she sought to avoid? The answer lay just beyond her reach, waiting to be discovered. Lila blinked, drawing herself back to the reality surrounding her, a world filled with the scent of fresh-cut grass and the distant laughter of wedding guests celebrating the night. Jake stood before her, waiting, his patience a stark contrast to the storm of questions brewing in her mind. Each laugh, each clinking glass, seemed to echo the uncertainty lurking just beneath the surface. "Are you okay?" he asked, breaking through her haze. The concern in his voice tugged at her, pushing her to engage, to explore the space between them bravely. "Yeah, just thinking," she said, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. As a nurse, she had cultivated the habit of masking her emotions behind polite facades, but tonight felt different. Tonight challenged her to peel back layers she often kept hidden, even from herself. "What are you thinking about?" His inquiry was more than curiosity, it was an invitation, a pathway toward a deeper understanding. Lila hesitated, contemplating the gravity of her response. What lay beneath her professional surface, amidst the chaos of heart and mind? About what's at stake, I guess. It's easy to get wrapped up in the allure of new opportunities, but... Jake prompted softly, his eyes warm and open. But it's harder to discern what's genuine. What if it leads me astray? The honesty surprised her, spilling forth like a flood she could no longer contain. Each word felt oddly liberating, as if giving voice to her fears lessened their grip on her heart. Jake studied her for a long moment, the glimmer of shared vulnerability mingling with a sense of urgency. Every good thing has risks. You can't let fear dictate your choices forever. Sometimes, you have to leap. His words buzzed inside her, awakening a familiar mix of inspiration and apprehension. Lila remembered the moments in her career when she had to step out of the comfort zone. Saving lives often required daring to confront the unknown. Could navigating this emotional turbulence be similarly transformative? Leaping means risking it all, she murmured, more to herself than to him. Could she risk the established routine of her life, the stability she had fought for so fiercely, for the sake of exploring something unseen and perhaps unknowably beautiful? Or, Jake countered, his voice low and sure, it might mean finding something you never knew you needed. Lila felt a smirk tug at her lips as she contemplated his perspective. You paint a romantic picture, Jake. Real life isn't always so generous. He laughed lightly, an infectious sound that brightened the evening air around them. But life can surprise you if you allow it to. That's where the magic is. Jake's enthusiasm ignited a flicker of rebellion against her own reservations. Could he be right? Just as she balanced the healthcare world's demands, could she bend the rules for her own heart's exploration? Yet, beneath the surface, doubt bubbled fiercely, threatening to drown her burgeoning sense of possibility. She thought of her son, the way his smile lit up her world, and how every decision she made was so tightly bound to his happiness. This potential for connection with Jake posed a dual-edged sword. What was the chance she could shield them both from the winds of change? Tell me what you want, he urged, leaning in slightly, breaking her reverie. What does your future look like? The question was both electrifying and suffocating. Could she articulate a vision that reflected not just her role as a caretaker but as an individual with her own needs and desires? And if she spoke them aloud, what would that truth cost her? As the music floated across the garden, Lila's heart raced with the weight of potential and a recognition that her desires didn't have to be separate from her responsibilities. Maybe it was time to reshape them, intertwining both possibilities into something richer. Maybe, she began carefully, my future could hold more than I let myself believe. Jake's eyes gleamed with encouragement. That's a good start. The evening shifted around them, as if caught on the cusp of the unknown. The garden's beauty felt alive with possibility, but shadows lingered just out of reach. Let's take that leap together, then. Not as a promise but as an exploration. We'll figure it out along the way, he suggested, his voice steady. The offer trembled with a truth she both craved and feared. Before she could respond, a loud cheer erupted from the wedding guests across the decor-laden lawn, snapping her back to the moment. Would she be ready to embrace the unfolding patterns of her life? What awaited if she committed to exploring both their lives intertwined in this drama of connection? In that moment of silence, her mind flashed with possibilities and one looming question: what if she wasn't merely seeking an emotional connection, but the catalyst for her evolution? Would this journey with Jake unravel the core of who she was, or could it tether her to a transformative path she never anticipated? The ground was shifting beneath her, and the next step was hers alone to make an exhilarating plunge into the murky waters of vulnerability. Could she truly allow herself to engage with the unknown? Would she face this gamble head-on, or slip back into the safety of her silhouette? And just like that, Lila knew one truth: the line between risk and reward could very well define who she would become, for better or worse. Lila stood at the intersection of a decision she had long avoided, its weight pressing down on her as thick and heavy as the summer air. The laughter from the wedding party danced around her, but she felt as though she were encased in glass, observing a world that felt increasingly foreign. For years, her life had been carefully curated, each moment planned and executed like a medical procedure. Yet now, as the kaleidoscope of emotions whirled inside her, the call for authenticity beckoned. She wanted to explore this connection with Jake, yet fear took root in her chest, threatening to strangle her potential to grow. What if she were to truly invest in something beyond her responsibilities? What if investing meant risking her son's happiness? Lila? Jake's voice sliced through her thoughts once more, a gentle reminder that he was still there, patiently waiting. It was a lifeline she realized she needed. What do you think? Jake's curiosity drew her back into the moment. Should we dive in? Lila studied him, assessing the sincerity in his eyes. How did he navigate the world with such ease? She marveled at how one conversation had already begun to unravel the tightly wound threads of her life. The vulnerability required to leap felt monumental, yet the risk of standing still was equally suffocating. Can we really figure it out? What if it doesn't work? The words spilled from her, shaped by years of caution, binding her tightly to the narrative she had meticulously constructed. Then we adapt. You can't predict the future, but you can choose how to respond, he replied, his voice steady, almost echoing the calming rhythm of a heart monitor. She considered his words carefully. Saving a life didn't guarantee success, it involved hope, resilience, and the willingness to confront the undefined. Would this be any different? Would allowing herself to embrace uncertainty set off a chain of transformations? I've been a caregiver my whole life, she said, her voice cracking, and what you're suggesting feels reckless. I'm responsible for my son, and my own needs always come second. That's not selfish, Jake interjected, his earnestness intensifying. And you're not abandoning him by wanting to find your happiness. What kind of message does that send to him if you stay confined in fear? His words hovered in the air. The notion that seeking fulfillment was a strength rather than a weakness began to shift her perspective. Lila had spent countless nights nursing others back to health, but she had never paused to consider her transformation. In that profound moment, she realized she had enabled everyone else's growth while neglecting the very seed of her own. But freedom came with a steep price, decisions that could alter the course of her life. Anxiety spiraled within her. Could she risk the stability she had painstakingly built? All right, she conceded, surprising herself with the admission. I want to try whatever this is. But I need you to understand the stakes. This isn't just about us, it's about my son, too. Of course, Jake said, taking her hand gently in his, grounding her in the present. I promise to respect that. We'll take this one step at a time. The contact sent jolts of electricity through her, awakening a dormant craving for connection and understanding. The barriers she had erected began to tremble as she opened herself to the possibility of healing. Shakily, she stepped over her own shadows, feeling the warmth of companionship replacing isolation. For the first time, Lila felt a rush of exhilaration as she loosened the grip of control. What if she embraced the uncharted path that lay ahead? With every heartbeat, the idea of leap widened into something beautifully terrifying. But just as hope bloomed within her, the distant sound of an argument caught her ear, stark and jarring against the celebration around them. You don't care about this family, a woman shouted, her voice cut with resentment, pulling Lila's attention toward a scene across the lawn. In an instant, uncertainty seeped back into her veins. Could her fragile resolve withstand the looming fallout of family ties and expectations? The turmoil around her mirrored her internal struggle, raising the stakes even further. She looked back at Jake, the urgency in his eyes showing he was attuned to her shift. What do you want to do now? He asked, his grip reassuring yet testing her readiness. But just as Lila prepared to respond, she realized one critical truth: personal growth often demanded confronting uncomfortable realities, not just those outside but also deep within. The moment surged with tension as she sought clarity amidst the surrounding chaos. If she was to lean into this connection and embark on a journey of self-discovery, every relationship past, present, and future might test her in unexpected ways. What was hidden just beneath the attractive illusion of adventure? Could she envision a future that harmonized her vast responsibilities with her newfound desires? The shadows loomed closer, environments shifted, and the unexpected threat of conflict emerged, ultimately forcing her hand. Would she navigate through the storm or succumb to its chaos? As uncertainty tightened its grip, Lila swayed on the edge of possibility. Would she stay, risking the plunge into the unknown, or would she retreat into the shadows she fought so hard to escape? Whatever the choice, it was clear she stood at a crossroads where every step could redefine who she was meant to be. The argument erupted like a thunderclap, interrupting the intricate tapestry of emotions Lila had begun to weave with Jake. She instinctively pressed her back against the cool surface of the stone wall, feeling its solidity ground her, even as her heart raced in response to the chaos unfolding before her. The emotions in the air were heavy and charged, spilling over into her own mind where doubt and determination battled fiercely. "What should we do?" she managed to ask Jake, her voice barely above a whisper. The fear of not only losing this moment with him but also of returning to a life constricted by fear loomed large as she searched his face for guidance. Jake's expression hardened, a thoughtful furrow forming between his brows. "We can either get pulled into that mess or create our own space away from it." His assertion was calm but firm, showing Lila that he, too, recognized the importance of boundaries, a stark contrast to the turmoil swirling around them. Taking a deep breath, Lila wavered. She was no stranger to chaos, having navigated it her entire life alongside her son. Yet, she had all too often buried herself beneath layers of responsibility, avoiding confrontation and the discomfort that came with it. The concept of stepping back and creating their own space felt foreign yet alluring. "Let us step away, then," she agreed, surprisingly resolute. For perhaps the first time in her adult life, she felt the weight of external expectations lifting, giving way to autonomy. Jake offered a reassuring smile as he led her toward an empty patio corner, far enough from the escalating argument to grant them a semblance of privacy. In their new oasis, away from the escalating tumult, she took a moment to let her senses adjust. The sound of the wedding celebration faded into murmurs, replaced by the gentle rustling of leaves and the distant clinking of glasses. Yet as the quiet enveloped her, Lila felt the raw intensity of her feelings surface, carving paths to uncharted territories within herself. "I want to know more about you, Jake," she confessed, her curiosity overtaking her momentary fear. "You seem to navigate through life with such confidence. How do you do it?" Jake leaned casually against the balcony railing, his gaze steady and penetrating. "We all have layers, Lila. I've worked hard to peel mine back, step by step. But it's taken heartbreak to learn the value of being authentic. You cannot hide from yourself forever." His words were a mirror reflecting back her own hesitations and long-buried desires. Personal authenticity was not merely a luxury but rather a necessity, she realized. The idea coalesced into a clear image: she must confront her own layers if she wanted to move beyond the surface of her limited existence. "I've always put others first," she confessed, the vulnerability in her voice surprising even her. "After my divorce and taking care of my son, I forgot what it felt like to prioritize myself." "That's common," he replied thoughtfully. "But growth often demands we risk feeling uncomfortable. You've already taken the first step by acknowledging this connection." The tension in her chest dulled slightly at his encouragement. What might it mean to embrace discomfort and face what lay beneath? The thought sent shivers through her. Just as excitement began to blossom, the earlier argument flared again, their voices rising, each accusation sharper than the last. "Do you hear that?" she ventured, instinctively gravitating back toward the chaos. "It's not just noise. It's deeper." Jake's gaze followed hers, a slight tension rounding his shoulders. It reflects the unresolved within us. But it's your choice whether you let it into your world. For a moment, Lila froze at the magnitude of his words. They encompassed so much more than that split moment of chaos. The crisis in front of her unfolded like a narrative she had called her own for years, yet the realization gripped her: she could choose to rewrite that story. The decision hung heavy in the air. Embarking on a journey not just with Jake, but within herself signaled the potential for transformation, a landscape where vulnerability and authenticity could intermingle. Would she dare shed the expectations that had long shackled her? Her pulse quickened at the thought. The other women had been fighting, asserting their fears, while she had been yearning for connection. The rift within her life echoed that very conflict. Could she confront the storm that swirled inside her and outside? As she looked into Jake's eyes, determination flickered, a flame ignited by the courage to face both her connections and the unforeseen obstacles that awaited her. With clarity sharpening her resolve, she understood the truth: she was not merely a caregiver. She was a woman capable of profound evolution. But just as her purpose crystallized, the shouts drew closer, emotions erupting like firecrackers. The chaos felt like a tidal wave approaching, and Lila stood at the precipice, her heart pounding with both fear and excitement. What awaited her on the other side of this moment? Could she bridge the gap between familial expectations and personal desires? That question lingered in the air, demanding an answer, as uncertain shadows loomed like sentinels guarding her future. Lila's heart raced as she absorbed the depth of her circumstances. The chaos before her seemed both a threat and a catalyst for change. As heated voices clashed, she felt the ground of her own reality shake beneath her. Distancing herself from the conflict wasn't just a choice, it was an awakening. She was hungry for a future defined less by fear and more by an authentic engagement with life, and Jake held the key. With renewed determination, Lila turned to face him again, and the decision coalescing in her mind felt monumental. I want to grow, Jake. To be more than just invisible, she confessed, her voice steady now, as though she were fortifying her intent with each word. Jake shifted his weight, leaning slightly closer. His expression softened, revealing layers of understanding that only deepened her resolve. Then you'll have to confront what you've been avoiding. Each layer you peel back will lead to a new understanding of your worth. The rustling leaves seemed to echo his sentiment, stirring a breeze that washed over her like a baptismal flow. Lila felt both vulnerable and empowered, and with that empowerment came a realization: she wasn't merely seeking connection, she was determined to reclaim her own autonomy. Tell me about a time when it felt unbearable, she prompted, pushing past her own apprehensions. Discomfort was the fertile ground of growth, and she wanted to know how to navigate through it, just as he had. Jake hesitated for a brief moment before he began. After my father passed away, I felt this incredible pressure to conform to the family business. I was drowning in expectations, unable to breathe. So, I took a leap, moved to the coast, found solace in the ocean, and rediscovered who I was beyond the air and the businessmen. A sense of empathy washed over her. Jake's struggles mirrored her own battles for self-definition amidst a cacophony of familial demands. But his story illuminated a path forward, one illuminated by risk and transformation. I've let the demands of others define my existence for too long, Lila admitted, the words tasting bitter yet freeing on her tongue. What did you learn about yourself through that process? Jake met her gaze intently, each word heavy with significance. I learned that authenticity isn't just about being true to yourself, it's about the courage to act on that truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Sometimes, you have to break away to find your true voice. His words resonated deeply, seeping into the crevices of her mind like sunlight breaking through the darkness. Lila realized that it was time to stop skirting the edge of her own truth. She needed to confront not just the external chaos but the internal storms that had shaped her life thus far. But just then, an explosion of voices shattered their moment of intimacy, forcing her to glance back at the source of the noise. The argument had intensified, drawing closer, threatening to engulf them both. The urge to retreat into the familiar drama was almost magnetic, but she felt anchored to her choice, a commitment to growth and authenticity. "Stay with me," she whispered, not just to Jake but to herself. The words felt like a promise, a resolution as solid as the stone wall that had supported her moments before. As the turmoil continued its spiral, Lila was struck by a realization: she could profoundly affect her surroundings by changing her internal narrative. The crux of her development lay in facing the discomfort, not fleeing from it. Yet, as she stood there, readying herself to embrace that discomfort, a figure emerged from the chaos. His voice cut through the din, issuing a challenge that echoed in her heart. A flicker of trepidation settled in her stomach. Who dared to confront her resolve? Lila. The shout was clear, commanding attention. With a mixture of dread and anticipation, she turned to face the unexpected voice, bracing herself for whatever or whoever awaited her. In the uncharted territory of her personal evolution, would she find confrontation or a deeper connection? The answer was closer than she could ever anticipate. Lila turned slowly, her heart pounding as she processed the voice calling her name. The familiar tone belonged to Derek, her estranged brother, a shadow from her past that had lingered like an unresolved question. There was a history between them, filled with misunderstandings and unspoken grievances that had created an emotional chasm over the years. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Each word felt like a barrier she was constructing, even as she yearned for connection. "Thought you'd run away again," he shot back, his expression a mix of reproach and amusement. "But it looks like you're finally standing your ground. What has changed?" Lila swallowed hard, feeling the tension in the air compressing around them like a tightening noose. Here was the confrontation she'd both apprehended and desired. Facing him now required her to reckon with the parts of herself she had long ignored. "I'm not running anymore," she stated, her voice firmer than she felt inside. "I'm trying to understand my own voice." Derek's eyebrows shot up in surprise, and for a moment, the unexpected vulnerability in his eyes disarmed her anger. Beneath the brash exterior she remembered from childhood, there seemed to be a flicker of concern. "Is that really what you think?" he asked, his tone softening. "Or is it just a new mask?" She was taken aback by his candor. For years, they had avoided deeper discussions, trading barbs and dismissive comments instead of confronting the truth of what had transpired between them. Did he sense the churning guilt and frustrations beneath her surface? Or was he simply projecting his own uncertainties? "I've realized that keeping myself hidden only leads to more pain," she admitted, her breath catching in her throat. "That being invisible was my choice, not my fate." Derek's gaze held her for a long moment, a battle of wills unfolding silently between them. Yet, the cacophony from the conflict nearby pulsed insistently, reminding Lila of her commitment to authenticity. She took a deep breath. She was here to confront herself as much as Derek. "You think you're so different now?" he finally said, a hint of skepticism lacing his words. "Last I checked, you were the same person who couldn't stand up for herself." His challenge stung, but rather than retreat, she felt a surge of defiance. "No, I'm not the same. I want to grow beyond those expectations. I don't need to conform to anyone's idea of who I should be anymore." The sincerity in her voice seemed to diffuse some of the hostility, creating space for a genuine conversation. Derek's posture relaxed, just a fraction, but it was enough to signal a readiness to explore the depths of their shared history. "Then maybe we should talk about that. About our past," he suggested cautiously, as though treading onto fragile ground. Lila's heart swelled uncomfortably with both hope and dread. Could this be the turning point she had been seeking? Could they finally break the cycle of silent resentment? Just then, the chaos nearby surged again, the disruptive voices intertwining like vines of discontent. The moment felt precarious. She knew she was at a threshold, grappling with both opportunity and fear. Before she could respond, another voice interjected, one that sent a shiver down her spine. Enough games, Lila. You can't escape reality forever. Turning toward the source, she froze, recognizing the speaker a familiar antagonist from her past that she had tried to leave behind. Panic entwined with the resolve she felt moments ago. Was she truly ready to face not just her brother, but the ghosts that haunted her? In the swirling chaos, Lila realized that her journey toward self-definition was only beginning. Would she be able to withstand this looming confrontation without succumbing to the shadows of her history? The challenge was clear, and the stakes had just risen dramatically. Lila's breath caught in her throat as she faced the figure stepping out from the shadows, the familiar voice echoing a long-buried history. It was Claire, the personification of her adolescent insecurities, the friend who unknowingly became one of her greatest fears. For years, Claire's presence hovered in the background, a constant reminder of the confidence and success Lila felt she lacked. "Claire," Lila whispered, the name tasting bitter on her tongue. "Surprised to see me?" Claire smirked, her eyes gleaming with a mixture of mockery and triumph. "Oh, Lila, you never could quite shake off your old habits, could you?" Each word from Claire's lips pricked like needle points, and Lila fought the urge to recoil. She could feel Derek's gaze shifting between them, uncertainty etched across his features. Lila knew this encounter had the potential to spiral into chaos if she allowed it, just as it had so many times in the past. Suddenly, the chaotic environment around them receded, immersing her in an almost deafening silence filled only by her unsteady heartbeat. She was reminded of the nights spent fretting over her reflection, what Claire thought, what everyone thought. The memories flooded back, threatening to destabilize the resolve she had only recently begun to forge. "Do you really think you belong here?" Claire continued, stepping closer, her voice lowering to a menacing whisper. "What makes you think you've changed at all?" The challenge swirled within Lila, igniting an internal battle. She could feel the weight of everyone's eyes, the echoes of her insecurities rising to the surface, stirring within her a potent mix of anger and determination. Those moments spent shrinking in response to Claire, the guilt of feeling less than those remnants were whispering incessantly. Taking a steadying breath, Lila seized the moment, her heart racing yet exhilaratingly alive. "You don't get to dictate who I am or who I should be," she shot back, her voice steadying even as adrenaline coursed through her veins. "I'm here to reclaim my narrative, and it doesn't include living in anyone's shadow, least of all yours." Derek's expression shifted, the skepticism from earlier replaced with something more akin to respect, a glimmer of recognition for the stand she was taking. For the first time, Lila felt an enigmatic strength surging from within, fueled by her renewed commitment to break free from her old patterns. This confrontation wasn't just about Claire, it was about Lila's courage, and the renewed clarity on her worth. "Pathetic," Claire huffed, feigning indifference but unable to mask the flicker of surprise in her eyes. "You think a few bold words will change who you are? You're still just Lila, the same scared girl, hiding behind her words." "No," Lila replied fiercely, her resolve coalescing. "I am Lila, and I'm not hiding anymore. I'm tired of running away from who I am. You can keep your judgments and limitations. I'm ready to forge my own path." Their eyes locked, and for the first time, Lila felt the remnants of fear start to dissipate. There was no guarantee that she would win this fight, but it mattered less in that moment. The growth she had sought wasn't about defeating Claire, it was about laying the groundwork for her own future. Just as a semblance of calm settled in, an unexpected warmth wrapped around her heart, a reassurance she hadn't anticipated. She was finally ready to confront the ghosts of her past, not only with Derek, but with Claire, and perhaps more importantly, with herself. "Careful," Claire hissed, her voice laced with venom. "You may not like what you find when you dig too deep." Lila felt the tremor of fear weave through her, yet it was intertwined with anticipation. Every word from Claire threatened to unlock doors to parts of her past she had closed off, but she was committed to facing whatever truth lay beyond. The challenge was not merely standing tall against Claire, it was about embracing the unknown within herself and channeling her experiences into a newfound power. As she stood there, the the specters of her past merged into a collective force, propelling her toward the future. Let us see what's behind those closed doors, then, Lila breathed, determination replacing fear. And as she took a step forward, the air thick with tension, she understood that this was the beginning of something profound, her evolution, her fight for authenticity. But with Derek watching closely and Claire still simmering with disdain, was Lila truly ready for the revelations that awaited her? The journey into her own truth was just beginning, and the outcome could change everything. Lila braced herself, the weight of the moment pressing down on her shoulders as she faced Claire with newfound resolve. It was no longer about merely standing her ground, it was about stepping into a realm where she could no longer afford to ignore her own worth. "I've let fear shape my choices for too long," she declared, her voice steady and clear. "It's time to confront my truth, no matter how uncomfortable it might be." Claire's smirk faltered for just a moment, a crack in her confident exterior. "What a lovely sentiment, but it doesn't change the facts. You still don't belong here." Lila felt the heat of anger rise within her, a fire igniting at the ridiculousness of Claire's assertion. "Belonging isn't defined by your perception, Claire. It's about being true to myself and nurturing my own growth. I don't need your validation anymore." Each word resonated within her, solidifying a transformation that had been stirring for months, if not years. Derek shifted, a mixture of admiration and surprise on his face. The sentimentality surrounding them, the laughter, the celebration faded into the background as the confrontation crystallized her newfound identity. This was not the timid, scared girl who would wither under the judgment of others, this was a woman who had fought battles, not just against others, but within herself. "And how do you plan to do that?" Claire scoffed, her defiance shaky yet still present. "By playing house with a billionaire?" "By being authentic," Lila countered. "By finding strength in my vulnerability and embracing the messy complexity of my life. If that means building something with Jake, then that's what I'm doing. You can either choose to support that or stand in the way, but realize that's your choice, not mine." In those moments, Lila understood that her choice wasn't merely about Jake, it was about defining her narrative going forward. Rejecting doubt did not eliminate the fear, but it gifted her with a clarity she hadn't anticipated. No longer would she let external chaos dictate her internal peace. Taking a deep breath, she acknowledged the gravity of her choices, knowing this was a turning point. She had clung tightly to her responsibilities as a mother and a nurse, and while those roles still shaped her identity, they did not confine her. "I choose to pursue joy without fear of judgment. I want to embrace my relationship with Jake not just as a personal endeavor but as a step toward my evolution." Claire's expression twisted in frustration, but Lila felt a sense of freedom swelling within her. This confrontation had morphed from intimidation to empowerment. She had traversed the darkness of self-doubt and emerged with a sense of purpose. It was time to step into the light. Just then, a gentle touch on her arm pulled her back to the present. Jake was there, his eyes reflecting an understanding deeper than she had imagined. "I'm proud of you," he murmured, the sincerity coursing through her, wrapping around her like a warm embrace. Lila felt buoyed by his presence, strengthening her resolve to move forward. It was a reminder that true personal growth blossomed from the courage to face one's fears. The reality of their connection had surprised her. Jake's respect and admiration reinforced what she had only begun to accept herself. She wasn't defined by her past or by others' perceptions but by her ability to reclaim her narrative. "Let us leave this chaos behind." Lila turned her back to Claire and walked toward Jake, who stood in silent encouragement. "This journey is ours to define, and I'm ready to embrace it." With every step they took together into the illuminated night, Lila felt lighter, unshackled from the ties that had long burdened her. She was not retreating, she was advancing into a future where clarity and authenticity became the foundation of her identity. Together, they stepped into a new chapter, hand in hand. It was a future resonant with possibility and meaning. Their exploration of love and the manifold aspects of growth lay ahead, the uncertainty welcoming rather than intimidating. In the midst of the vineyard's enchanting allure under the starlit sky, Lila had risen, standing firm in her self-worth and forging ahead, not just for herself, but for Billy and for the authentic woman she was becoming. The future before her shimmered with promise, brimming with opportunity to cultivate a life of genuine engagement, love, and fulfillment. And so, she decided this was not merely an end but the flourishing of a journey she was entirely prepared to take. Now, to support her journey and follow along on this exploration of life, you need to subscribe to the channel immediately. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share this transformative story with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, and comment your reactions and theories about Lila's new path. Join the conversation and be part of a community that celebrates personal growth and authentic transformations.